All right, so people starting to file in. Andrew, I see that you're here, so if you want to go ahead and raise your hand, I'll get you on screen. Perfect. So while Andrew is getting signed in so he can come online, I'll just welcome everybody to our session today. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're doing well. Give a shout out. Let us know where you're calling in from. And today's session is going to be really cool. We've got Andrew Maff from BlueTuskr, and he is going to be talking to us about how to make sure that your listings translate when you expand to new markets. So this is really exciting. So if you're looking at expanding into a new marketplace, tell us where you're looking at. Tell us where you're thinking about going. Hi, Andrew.
What's up?
Not much. How are you? So it's evening for you. So thanks for joining us.
Oh, it is evening.
Awesome.
Ooh, Melbourne,
All right.
Thornbury. Awesome. This is going to be a good one. It is evening for me, so I hope you don't mind. I'm going to make this a fun one. This is going to be good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I'll have to run the slides for you, so you just let me know if you need me to advance the slide, but if you want to take it away, we can go ahead and dive in.
Awesome. Quick question for you. I tweaked these slides a little bit, probably about 20 minutes ago. Do you have them as of now or not?
No, I have the older ones.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
Okay.
I can work with it. So we're good. All right, ready to do this?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we're doing Amazon listing translations, right? So what do we call this guy? Make sure your listings translate when expanding into new markets. So at this point, presumably, everyone has already started the process of moving into a new market at Amazon, right? So whether you're in the States, you're in Australia, you're in Europe, you're starting to expand. I'm going to touch on that just a little bit, just for fun, because I like to warm it up a little. But then we're going to get into the translation side of things, which is why everyone's here. So we'll go through why you need to go into new markets to scale. Obviously, if you're stuck in one region, how to keep going. We'll do setting up listings for a new market, which is essentially why everyone's here. The do's and don'ts of all that fun stuff. And we're going to touch on the imagery side because everyone tends to forget about that fun stuff. So let's do this thing.
So you are Andrew. Yes, we know and love you, Andrew, founder of BlueTuskr. And I think everyone is familiar with me. So yeah, I've been here a while. So
how many of these have you done?
Oh, geez, I don't count.
I'm going to try and make this one that you remember.
Excellent. I'm sure you will.
So I did want to do something a little fun because I knew we were going to have some people who are joining us today, and I always really respect the people that actually show up versus the ones that are like, yeah, I'm going to do it, and then they watch the replay later. That's not as fun. So for all of you that are watching this right now, I do have something I'm going to give away towards the end. So I'll keep you all updated as we do that. And then that way, anyone who's here who is live, I will have something super fun for you. And if you're not, you're watching it later, I also have something for you, but it's not as cool. So we're going to talk about why you should look at new Amazon markets. So this is like, if you're thinking about getting into new markets and you haven't yet, and you're already thinking about the process and doing it, which is why you're watching this webinar, this graph alone blows my mind because it's the one thing that I always find very interesting, right? So a lot of people, go USA, we're the top one right now. And with the following one being Germany, which most Amazon sellers know, it kind of has something to do a little bit with theories behind it, cultural and how they live their lives versus how Americans live theirs. And hence, that's the theory. I don't really know. All I know is that these are the actual numbers as of 2021. Now, if you look at that graph on the far right there, 2021, so we'll see obviously how this year goes. But if you took that graph and actually put some percentage points on it, if you're only selling in the States, let's say, you're missing out on a 40% potential increase in your revenue, right? So by just saying like, okay, I'm going to go into other markets, like I sell in the States, let's go ahead and look into this. You're literally going to have the opportunity to improve your revenue by 40%. I don't work for Amazon. I get no benefit from that. I just think it's awesome that you could just do that. The question is, you got to do it right. And in my opinion, the easiest ones to get into, if you're in the States, would be Canada, UK, Australia, because of the translations, which we're going to touch on. Those are a little bit easier, but they're not as easy as you would actually think. So hence why we're having this fun little event here. But that's your guy right there. So these are all the options. So in the other slide, it mentions like others. This is basically the others. So these are all the different countries that you can sell in or regions. And it doesn't include the countries that you have the ability to sell in. So if you live, in Europe, that might be where you're actually selling out of, and where Amazon has warehouses and things like that. But they have different countries that they can ship to. So essentially, it opens you up to getting basically completely global. So setting up your listings for new Amazon Market. So this is, again, we're just going to touch on this for a little bit, only because I felt like it was necessary to kind of ease into the process here. So it's super easy to do. So no matter where you're selling, all you have to do is go to that URL right there. So it's sell.amazon.com/global-selling, and they'll walk you through exactly how to get set up. To be completely transparent, usually I get involved from a marketing aspect once that's already been done. However, it's super simple. So you really just go through, you figure out where it is you want to sell, so where it is you're looking to expand into. You have to register your products and set up all the shipments and fulfillings, which if you have FBA, Amazon will ship it to whichever warehouse you need for you, and you just manage it, which is kind of where we take over. So that's basically the easiest way to get things set up.
I love the fact that they've changed it too now, where when you go through the global selling, you're not paying a different fee for Amazon in each market. They combine it between however many markets you're in. So I think that makes it, because I think that was holding a lot of people back for a while from going into new markets. It's like, oh, it's going to be another monthly fee plus everything else, and now it's not. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it used to be a few years ago. It was wildly complicated. It was a bit of a pain. Figuring out products and stuff like that and where they were going to go was a nightmare. It was doable, but they've made it like so streamlined. And I think the reason is, in my opinion, is it makes a lot of sense, right? If you have a certain product line that's doing really well, let's say in Australia, Amazon is going to benefit by taking that same product and allowing you to make it super easy to sell it across the globe. Because if you're doing awesome, they want you to continue to do awesome elsewhere, because all Amazon cares about is their customers. In my opinion, they don't care about the sellers really at all, except just enough because it affects their customers.
True.
All right. So what to do and what not to do when translating copy. So this is super fun. So this is one of my favorite slides. And it's because I know countless sellers who have said, okay, I want to go into new areas, and they go to the easy ones that I listed, right? So if you're Canada, Australia, United States, UK, if you're English speaking, because you assume all those places speak English. There's over 100 different words in British English that are completely different in American English. So if you're in the States, and I'm sure there's a lot in Australia, which, Kim, I know you mentioned, you don't say shrimp on the Barbie. That's not true. That's not true at all. So could you imagine if you put that listing, you start going over to Australia and they're like, this is ridiculous. This is offensive.
I told everyone when I moved here, I've been here over 12 years. And after a few months, I was like, guys, we all speak English. I said, but Australian is its own language.
Yeah.
Going back, and you'll be familiar with this. Some of our Australians won't, but the Outback Steakhouse. That's the worst Australian fake accent I've ever heard. And everyone in America thinks it's like, so I took my husband there when we went to America. He's like, you got to be kidding.
So you don't have bloomin' onions all over, like you guys don't have those? No. That's amazing.
No, it's a shame because they're great, but no, we don't. So yeah. For those of you in Australia, when you go to America, you've got to go to an Outback Steakhouse just for the laugh.
So I love that. So let me paint a bit of a picture here. I find the biggest issue that most sellers have is that they're so deep in their own business that they forget that they are also a customer. I'm sure you shop on Amazon. Everyone does it. The problem is you're so ingrained in the industry that when you look at a listing, you're not looking at a listing like a normal person. You're not shopping like a normal person. You're going through bullet points and you're like, yeah, I do need some new coasters, which Kaiser Soze this thing, but I do need some new coasters. And they're like, oh, I wonder what their bullet points say. And I wonder if their description, oh, they don't have A+ content. I'm not buying this. It's a blessing and a curse. But the thing that I find very interesting is that what most sellers always do, and they don't realize that they do it once they go, outside whichever region they started in, is most of them are very, very nitpicky about grammar. Like, make sure that, you know, your listing is written well and it's, you know, got proper grammar and it's got ideally you have some kind of brand voice guideline that you're following for all of your listings. So basically, you know, you're making sure that everything sounds the same and you're putting so much work into your listings. And then you go overseas to wherever it is you go. And let's say you're still making it easier on yourself and you go to UK and you end up just taking all that and you put it into a UK listing. If I were to go to a listing from someone who's sold in the UK over to the US and it's got all these words where I'm like, you're talking about like, what's a bank note? Like, I don't know what any of that is. Like, all of a sudden you start to question that and you go, this seems a little odd. And so I'm not as comfortable with my purchase. So you'd be amazed at, I've seen sellers who will take, you know, let's say they're here in the States, they'll take their listing verbatim, put it in the UK, suffer for a while, and then have someone in the UK tweak it and translate it for just cultural differences and obvious like language differences. And then all of a sudden, immediate conversion rate improvement, in which, as we all know, slowly improves your rankings, your organic rankings, and then you're rich, right? So that's how it works. So it's always really interesting to me to see the sellers that just kind of skip over the super detailed stuff. And I find that when you go overseas, it's like starting a new business and it's almost like starting your brand from scratch. So to go out there, essentially half-assing it is ridiculous. And this chart right here, and I could only get a screenshot of enough of them where it was legible, but this is just the beginning of over 100 words that are different just from the British language. That doesn't include, like we talked about Australia, or obviously it's completely different when you get into different languages. But this is exactly why you have to translate everything.
Yeah, I have a lot of Australian friends who come to me and ask me about things before they do their listing in the US, because, you know, I've lived here for 12 years, so I've got a unique perspective. I can see both, but I know that there's going to be things if I go to the UK that are going to be still slightly different, even from Australia. Not much, but slightly. So yeah, you have to pay attention to the details.
Exactly. So this is, that broke. Lame. So this is what I think are basically your three options. There's probably AI out there and all that fun stuff. It's the same thing as Google Translate, right? So you have your three options. You have Google Translate, you have using a service or an agency, or you have hiring a native speaker. So the first one that we're going to talk about is leveraging Google Translate, right? So this is my favorite one. You go to the next one. So Google Translate is hilarious. So it's a great way to half-ass doing your listing. If you want to like maybe start the process and send it to someone to adjust from there or something like that, but I never suggest using Google Translate. This was an interesting example of like how it just starts to change itself after a while because of the way that translations work. There's an entire website I actually found just because I was like, all right, I got to find an example of this. There's an entire website of just incorrect translations for Google Translate. So using this is so wildly inaccurate. And a lot of times too, you also have to think about it's not only the cultural difference, but it's the cultural difference of the customer you're trying to reach, right? So I actually was part of an event earlier today with Ecommerce Tech, and there was a great talk, and I hate that I can't remember the guy's name, so I'm giving him zero credit, but he was there and he did a great job. And it was essentially discussing how years ago there was 4 or 5 beer brands. Now there's thousands and thousands of them. And he was showing an example of a product page for, I think it was Nike or something. And he was showing all of the words that they were using and the way that they laid out the page. And then he showed some guy who left Puma and started his own business. I can't remember what it was, but it's basically a running shoe company. And the words that were being used were catering to a runner. So they were using words that a runner would use. So to take a listing that you would use, let's say, as a runner on Amazon, and then translate them, the way that you explain running in Australia might be completely different the way that it's explained when you translate elsewhere. Not to mention, obviously, the metric system and all that fun stuff, which we'll get into, but there's kind of like slang and like, there's another word for it, but like little intricacies of the way that things are
Colloquialisms.
yes, that's it. Your vocabulary is better than mine. So there's those little things that are just, and I'm not even going to say it because you deserve all the credit for remembering that word. So there's those little things that like you would say differently from a cultural aspect. So when you do Google Translate, not only are you probably wrong in the way that you're doing it, but it also comes out very robotic and bland. And in some cases, you think like, you know, we have like, instead of saying do not, we don't, like things like that. In which case, in other cultures, they may not do that. So now you're translating it and it's incorrect. So it's just, I would never suggest using Google Translate.
You know, it's funny when this is like a long time ago when I was in high school taking high school Spanish. There's a car that you'd probably remember called the Nova.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So that was a horrible seller in Mexico and Spain because no va in Spanish means doesn't go. So yeah, simple little things like that it's like, yeah, they had to completely rename the car.
It's amazing. And that's actually a really good point. When you think about even incorrect translations like that, you think of the cultural differences that you have to keep in mind. So there's a lot of cars here in the States that are available in Europe that are named completely differently. Same car, except wheels on the other side, but otherwise it's the same car, and it's just those cultural differences. So that kind of brings us into the next option, right? So now you have the option of using a service or an agency. So obviously I'm biased. I'm an agency. So naturally I'm going to tell you that you should use a service or an agency and hire me to translate your listings and all that fun stuff. You go ahead to the next slide. I'll tell you right now, don't do that. Don't, like, I know it's a horrible way for me to transition into this. Don't hire an agency or a service. It's a great way for me to sell my services, I know, but that's the reason right there. Is the third option is the agency's just going to hire a native speaker. That's all they're going to do. So skip out the middleman, get away from the broker, go direct to consumer, which is why we're all here. Go straight to a native speaker. So you have Upwork, you have Fiverr. Actually, that's the next slide. I got ahead of myself. So you have all these different places, and there's so many more than just this. But just going through and finding a native speaker. Now the vetting process of that is complicated a little bit, right? Like you could put up a post on Upwork and say I'm looking for a native speaker and this and blah blah, but like we use Upwork a lot. So what I would suggest is only hire someone who's currently in that country, and then go through a regular interview process. They don't really need to know a lot about Amazon listings and how you would use certain terms and things like that, because ideally you've done a lot of that research on the front end. So now you're just giving them, okay, here's what it says in English. I need you to translate it not only word for word, but I'll give them some room to adjust a little bit based on just like cultural differences. So this is, man, that one broke too. My designer's gonna kill me. So optimizing these translated listings, right? So this is one of those things where you go through the whole process. You've now gotten someone to help you translate it. You've hired a native speaker, which if you didn't realize, I gave you 3 options and really only gave you 1. So hire a native speaker. And so you've hired a native speaker, you've gone through that, and then you launch it. The struggle that I always see a lot of sellers have is, especially if you're like solely an Amazon seller, you love to tinker, you love to tweak, you love to do little tiny things to see if you can slowly start to increase your sales. And the struggle when you go overseas is, now do you need someone in paid advertising that is native to that? Do you need someone to consistently update your listings who's native in that language? And now all of a sudden, if you're getting into hundreds of countries, you're hiring hundreds of people, and that gets out of hand. So what we try to kind of showcase is that there's ways that you don't really need to do that, and that you can still keep it in-house. So you have the native language keyword research, right? So in that aspect, usually what we suggest you do, you have your own keyword research. You ask the person that you've hired to translate to take all those terms and convert them into, basically what would be the immediate translation, and or what would be like the cultural difference that would be in there. Take those same terms, you can plug them back into almost any software, like ZonGuru, and be able to decipher like how, like what the search volume is for those. Then you can pull those same numbers, give them back to your native speaker and let them use those. But as time goes on, you still want to tweak those things. So you have your auto sponsored product campaigns. The best thing about those is if you start off with a good listing, you have, your title's good, your bullet point, product description, all the fun stuff in the back end. If it's all good, you're already at a good spot. You start off with those auto sponsored product campaigns, and essentially what's going to happen is Amazon's going to start to teach you what it is people are searching for that your listing is getting conversions for. So then you either if you feel that you can adjust it yourself, go ahead, take that risk, or B, you reach back out to your native speaker and go, hey, we've learned some new terms. Can you add this to our title? Can you adjust this in our product description and bullet points, all that fun stuff? And it's the same thing with pulling those search term reports. If you start to get out of those auto sponsored product campaigns, you start to get into all of your broad match, your phrase match, fun stuff. So you're pulling all of your reports and your paid advertising to start to teach you how you can adjust those listings, which you're doing on your own listings regardless. It's just a matter of, in this case, it's a little bit more difficult for you to do it internally. So you have the option of either pulling it and adjusting things yourself if you think it's only 1 or 2 words and it's not complicated, or if it's a completely different language that you don't know, just have that person on call and be like, hey, I'll pay you for an hour to just tweak this listing real quick.
Yeah, because I figure going into a foreign speaking country that I'm not a huge fan of auto campaigns, but I think that would be really invaluable because it's meant to harvest those keywords you don't know. So you're going to find those things, and Amazon's smart enough to serve up the right keywords for you if you've done a good job of teaching it what your product is. So those would be invaluable in these markets.
Yeah, exactly. Like, in my opinion, auto campaigns become completely pointless once you've been running for a while and you've basically kind of learned every which way that someone can search for something, especially after your first year, because then you've gone through your seasonality. You know if they're going to search one way in December versus one way in July or something like that. You kind of weigh out all your options. And then after that, there's not really a point. But if you think about, you're now getting into a new region, it's like you're starting a new brand. It's almost like you're starting completely from scratch. You're not getting any of your reviews moved over. You're not getting any of that stuff. So you really are taking your best sellers, putting them somewhere else and starting from scratch again. So you have to be able to revert back. So you think it might have been The Messy Middle. I have to pull it up. I can't remember. There's a book though that they talk about, especially for e-commerce sellers, you have that $100,000 a year mark, 500, 1 million. Then it's then 3 million, then 5, then 10, then 25, then 50 are the really difficult hurdles for most sellers to break. And every time you kind of get to that new area, you have to adjust the way you're thinking, because you may be running a business that's doing $1 million a year and you want to get to 5. You have to start thinking like a $5 million a year business. The thing that's difficult with going overseas is that you could be a $1, $2, $3 million a year business, and you don't realize you're going overseas and you're zero. You're starting from scratch again. So you have to have 2 mindsets where you're kind of thinking scrappy like you used to, versus you want to make sure that the overall business is still scaling. So that's kind of why the auto thing, it's I would start it over for maybe a year, if that, and then pull it back. And by then your campaign should be cleaned up if they know what they're doing.
Yeah. Oh, photography, imagery is one of my favorite things.
Oh man. So when you asked me to do this, I was like, oh, we have to, I'm absolutely digging into imagery, because it blows my mind how many people fight to just translate it verbatim. They do it in just the titles and the bullet points, and then that's it. And they don't touch the imagery at all. And so you have the obvious, which is your copy, right? You can go to the next slide. So you have your obvious stuff, the copy, right? So obviously the copy needs to be translated. So it's a very similar thing here, where you need to focus on not only the direct translation, but the intricacies of the culture. And the funny thing is I find that so many people don't bother with them, because Amazon does set it up in certain cases where you can just carry all of your data over to another region. So there's all right, well, let me just throw it up and kind of see if I get a little bit of something. Right. And then I'll put more money into translating these and optimizing these appropriately. If you even got one, I'd be shocked if someone were to do that, if they got one sale out of it. And the interesting thing about the images is that your average person who's shopping on Amazon is not reading your bullet points or your product description. They're not even looking at your A+ content unless they've gone through your images. So if your images are nothing short of flawless, you're losing it. Like, you'll lose the sale, they will go away. So this is the first thing that you have to focus on outside of the content, simply because you won't get indexed if it's not done correctly. The images, though, this is one thing where there's a lot of cultural things that you have to keep in mind. Like, if you're going to a different country, you might want to have a model in there that emulates someone from that country. Or you might want to think about, depending on what your product is, the differences of things that that culture may care about. So, for example, I'm not putting shrimp on a barbecue when I put up ads in Australia because Kim told me not to. So it's a prime example of just thinking about the intricacies of the imagery. And then the other thing that a lot of people don't think about, which always blows my mind, is the metric side of things, right? So you have the metric system versus standard system. Is it standard? I don't even know what we call it here.
Standard, Imperial? Right? It's standard, Imperial, Imperial, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like standard sounds so, can't call it standard.
It's the US and the rest of the world. So.
Exactly. Sorry. But like, that's the most obvious to me, right? Like, you have to change those. You have to make sure that they translate correctly. And a lot of times, even, and I'm sure there's people out there who are watching this now who will shop, and they'll realize, like, as they're shopping, they're like, oh, this is all done. Like, if they're in the States, it's like, oh, this is all like, I don't know these metrics. I don't know how many kilometers I need this tire to take me. And so it confuses them, and they just go, I'm going to find someone that I know is here in the States. And so it's the same problem no matter where you go. So images are the key thing that you have to make sure that you're adjusting not only the copy, but the images themselves to make sure that they're reflective of the culture that you're going to.
Yeah. I mean, I sell a product, and I had to make sure that because it holds something, and so I had to make sure that the volumes were translated correctly into the US, because I'm not selling in Australia just yet. And so it's like, now I've got to go back and change all of my graphics so that it's all the metric when I launch in Australia, so it all matches up. And then also just knowing if it's, something like mine, what is the normal package size that someone buys in that country that would use this product, and is this going to be enough? So there's a lot of little size intricacies when you get into those kind of things. But yeah, just simple measurements, and there's so many apps that can translate it for you super easy, so it's not really even hard. I love that the really poor translation in that infographic.
Which one? The one here?
Slim hypoallergene performance hose.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's amazing. Like, sometimes the lack of detail that we find. And the interesting thing is too, is at least here in the States, for the longest time, it's gotten a lot better, but there was a lot of knockoffs, presumably from China. And so you would get a ton of sellers that would do nothing but complain about all these knockoffs from China. And you can tell because it says this, and you can tell because it says that, or you can tell because they use this picture and no American would do that, blah, blah. And then they go and they decide, like, oh, I'm going to start selling overseas. And they do the exact same thing in just a different country. And they're like, I don't get it. Why is no one buying my stuff? Like, you literally just complained about that same thing, and then you went and did it yourself. And it's amazing to me. Like, it's really, Amazon has made it super easy for you to go overseas. But just because you can click a handful of buttons, get approved, and then start selling, doesn't mean that the work is over. The management side is a big workload of this. So it's like going through and, all the content, all of the images. Like, you basically need to reach out to someone overseas to look at everything and just ask them, be like, is there anything about this that seems odd to you? Even if you just grab someone off of Upwork or whatever, pay them for an hour, even if it takes them 5 minutes, just so it's worth their time, because it's absolutely worth your time. Even if they're $70-$80 an hour, it's going to make you so much more money in the long run that it's completely useful. Honestly, we've even done where we've actually hired someone overseas to help us just review stuff and translate it. And then we hired someone else from the same country just as a backup, just to look at it and go, does this look good to you? Because, one person's opinion versus another, and it's kind of like having all your ducks in a row and making sure you're going through review processes. You just grab one more person and be like, sure, why not? It's like market research.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Oh, that was brilliant. So that was a lot of really great, valuable information. So guys that are here, please, if you have any questions, if it's something for Andrew, something for me, you can ask us anything. As always, our question and answer is completely open. What can we tell you? And you had a special bonus for those people who are here live too.
I do. So for everyone who is here currently with us, you can email me, andrew@bluetuskr.com. There's no E, so it's BLU. Well, there's no E in Tuskr. So andrew@bluetuskr, BLUETUSKR.com. So the first person to email me that you guys watch this and you were all tuning in, thank you, Kim, for putting it in there.
I spelled it wrong.
Yeah, you missed the K.
I missed the K. All right, let me fix it.
So the first person to email us in there, we're gonna give a free listing optimization or an A+ content. We'll do your whole thing for you from beginning to end, depending on your product line. That can run $750 plus value on our end. So happy to give one of those away to anyone who's listening and who's with us now. So in the next 20 minutes, you got to email me. If you're watching this at any point, you can email me as well, and I have something else for you, but I'm not going to tell you what it is.
Awesome. That is really generous. That is huge. So, and if any of the people that are on live today, if they don't have a current listing, you'll still honor that when they do get one up and going.
Yep. Yeah, just email me. I'll hold your spot.
That's awesome. All right, everybody. So someone better get their email going really quick. So does anybody have any questions for us that we can answer? I really learned a lot from that. That was really cool. And the big thing for me is just definitely the colloquialisms, if I can say it, and you're just getting those people in the country to be able to help you out, and give that look over and know that you've got something that actually does speak to the customer that you're trying to reach.
Yeah, it's all about putting your best foot forward. The last thing you want to do is go through all the intricacies to start being able to sell internationally. There's so much other complicated stuff that has to go into it between taxes and all this stuff that I don't even understand. And so you don't want to go through all that just to launch, just to half-ass your launch, because then you're going to sit there, you would have gone through all that and you'll make nothing. But like we showed in one of the beginning slides, there's a 40% potential increase in your revenue. So no matter what your revenue is, and assuming your profit, and honestly, in my opinion, I almost always see better profit margins overseas, only because you are starting from, even though you're starting from scratch, you do have some knowledge of, okay, I've now figured out what colors work and what type of voice works and things like that. And although it's going to get adjusted, you're not starting completely from scratch. So I find that you don't spend so much wasted time trying to figure out what works. You've already optimized the concept of your listing so it's improved for conversion. There's so many opportunities there to just make sure that you can put it up correctly. You just need to not half-ass it when you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't think we have any questions, but that was awesome. I really appreciate your time, Andrew, and especially, on an evening like this. So thanks so much for joining us.
Not a problem.
I really enjoyed it. And we'll have to have you back another time. So this has been a lot of fun.
I'll be here. Happy to do it. We can go through those auto campaigns and you hate them so much.
Oh, I do. I really do. Oh, and I've got one last little tidbit that you may find surprising. Foster's is not Australian for beer.
It doesn't surprise me at all. Australia,
nobody drinks Foster's.
I love my beer, and I honestly can't remember what it was that I had. I had something that was from Australia, and I go, this is so much better than that Foster's garbage. Foster's
nobody drinks it.
It's like Miller Lite, but from Australia, and then I don't even think it's actually. Is it even from Australia? Is it actually Australian? Or is it just branding?
But I don't. Yeah, I think it is, but no one is my husband's just no one drinks that. It's not even Miller Lite. It's not even that good.
No, I don't blame him.
Well, thanks everybody.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, so someone better get on their email and email Andrew and take advantage of that awesome gift. So thanks so much, Andrew, and I will talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.